Good morning, everyone. This is Rama on Riding coming to you live from a hot and sunny and beautiful Sedona, Arizona. My first day back from my Hawaiian summer vacation. I'm not sure if I'm really here yet. I think I still have one foot left in the ocean. But Sedona is beautiful this time of the year, as it is most times of the year. The red rocks are spectacular, and the number of things changed in Sedona while I was away. Not the least of which my favorite coffee shop was closed down and will become part of Whole Foods' new coffee shop. We'll see how that goes. And a few restaurants opened up. A very fancy looking one has been opened that has been in build for over a year. So it'll be interesting to see how that adds to Sedona. And next week we have I think our largest retreat that I've been part of in the 4 years that I've worked with Tom. So we're glad to have Mary helping, and Tom Pitts will be helping, and I'll be running the remote and not helping too much. So that'll be good. Well, today we have an interview with Mary Stevenson. And I just first want to thank Mary for stepping up and helping us out with being Tom's assistant. Without her right now, I think both Tom and I would be pulling our hair out, and we're getting old. Our hair's getting pretty thin anyway, so we don't need to pull it out. So thanks, Mary, for stepping up and doing that. Mary's got a very exciting book called Falling Over Reno. And this is a wonderful story, and we're going to have her tell us a little bit about the story. But first, I just kind of want to set the foundation for an experiment that I'd like as many of us to participate with as possible. And that is to do a little bit of tweeting and write a blog post about Mary's book and get that out online this week so that it can be coordinated with Mary's book launch, which starts the first day of the retreat on Thursday. So we do want to kind of talk a little bit about some hashtags that Mary will be using. So Mary, have you determined what your main hashtag is going to be?
No, I still am a little bit in hashtag limbo of not really totally getting it, how to use them, and I need your guidance on that, please.
Well, if you can put yourself into the future 5 years from now, I would think that every search that we do, or the majority of searches we do, will be based on a hashtag. Okay, so a hashtag can be a branding component, and it can be a broader component as well. In this case, I think that we're really interested in a branding hashtag, and my gut feel would be hashtag Skyjacker's wife.
I agree.
And so everyone that posts about this webinar, about Mary, about her book, you're going to want to use that hashtag Skyjacker's wife. Okay.
And we don't put any punctuation in that. There's no apostrophe S, right?
There is no apostrophe S, and when I hashtag, I put a capital at the beginning of each word, no space between. So that would be the hashtag that we would want to work with in this blog posting. So Mary, first off, why don't you tell us all the name of your book, and why don't you tell us a little about yourself, beyond being an author. I know you're a Vedic astrologer, but I really have no idea what that means. So maybe you can share a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into some more detailed questions about your book.
Thank you, Rama. Well, I started out life in South Carolina and moved to Reno when I was 16 to visit an aunt and uncle for the summer, and they invited me to stay, and I got to go to school there and immediately got my grades way back up on honor roll. And that is, I believe everything happens for a reason. I feel it was total destiny for me to go there. Not only did I meet the people I was supposed to meet, which included Rob Hetty, who became my boyfriend. We were in Reno High School together. But I also met David, who was very significant to me and got me on my spiritual path. So I learned transcendental meditation when I was 23 years old. And 2 years later, I went to Europe and became a TM teacher. And so I was actively teaching TM and running meditation centers around the country for several decades. And being that I'm of Irish and Scottish descent, I have that Celtic blood and the intuition that comes with it. And after my second divorce, I knew I had to find a way that brought me joy to make a living. So when I moved to Boulder, Colorado in June of 1996, I saw an ad in the paper for a psychic hotline. Well, I thought, well, I'm a Vedic astrologer. Maybe I can do my readings that way. So I got hired on there. So I've been a Vedic astrologer for 26 years, doing private readings, giving celestial insight into your past, present, and future. Because this system is 5,000 years old, and it really predates the Western. It's based on the sidereal zodiac, and I find it much more accurate. I started out with Western astrology, of course. So I have my private clientele. I have many long-distance readings around the country that I do for them. And on the psychic hotline, I've worked for 20 years giving readings. And just really grateful that I've moved here. I always follow guidance. I really knew hardly anyone here when I moved here in May of 2014, here to Sedona. But I started going to Unity Church and saw this ad for Tom and one of his intro lectures. And that is what I went to exactly 1 year ago. And I knew immediately, without a shadow of a doubt, that that is why I was guided to move here. It just was like this feeling. It was a wave of knowingness that came over me. And I knew instantly that I was going to take that 3.5-day workshop and that I was going to enroll in both Publish Now and Best-Selling Author Program. It was just like, well, this is pretty clear. And it was really quite a big investment for me. But here I am a year later. And the book was put up on Amazon April 20th, but now the hard launch is happening August 27th. So it's like 1 year's time, a lot of work, a lot of help from various people. Gwen used to run the revision webinars when I was on those, and then being on Rama's webinar of support every week and learning a tremendous amount, as you all know, has been extremely helpful. And so now I'm at that point and ready to publish my story, as Steve Martin would say, and yeah, ready to do it with the hard launch.
Well, it sounds good, Mary. For those of you in the midst of the throes of your publishing timeline, being able to get your book written and published in under a year is a great accomplishment. Certainly it is a better performance than I was able to do. So, you know, good work, Mary. For those of you who, you know, are frustrated based on how long, you know, the projection of getting it done is going to take, this is a long game. And I think that we all have to kind of sit back and realize that as we move through it, and it'll take the pressure away. Mary, can you just give us the full name of your book and your website and perhaps your email address?
Okay. Falling Over Reno, the true story of the Skyjacker's wife. And I love my book cover. And you know, Rama was very helpful. I mean, the images I asked for, I wanted this airplane in a night sky, and I wanted the parachuter so that they could see it had the guy had come out of the plane, and then a picture of Reno below. So the artwork was good. Rama did a lot of help on the font and everything of the actual title. Someone just asked about the hashtag, and Rama suggests, which I agree, Skyjacker's wife with a capital S and a capital W. Oh, Lynn, you've got friends in the Reno Sparks area? You went to Sparks? Hi! Ah! Okay, you went to UNR? Oh my God. Well, so did I. I graduated in '72 with my degree in anthropology with honors. And that very weekend that I graduated, and I was off with girlfriends celebrating at a hunting lodge. We had no funds. We had no TV, no newspaper. That's when my boyfriend, who was fresh back from Vietnam, chose to skyjack the damn airplane, ruining all our plans to live together and have a life. And
I remember that.
You were there then?
Yeah, that was the year I finished at Sparks. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. So you remember the story. Well, I had given up a PhD scholarship at the University of Pittsburgh that one of my professors helped me get into, but my grades were good in anthropology, to live with Rob. And so my whole life was shattered. By the way, here's the bookmark that Rama helped me to. He did the design work. He's such a gem for my book. And as you can see, this QR code here at the bottom, so if people have a device like a smartphone, they can just, I guess, take a picture of it and it goes right to the website. And wow, Lynn, that will be so great. So great. By the way, I do want to, in your case, confirm what Rama just was telling you. I mean, I went through like 10 iterations of proofs because there were mistakes in my book. And we had to get all that right before we made it an ebook. And I think his guidance is really good to you, even if it feels frustrating. You don't want to do your hard lunch. I mean, Rama's been educating me for a year now, and it took a while for some things to sink in my thick skull, but you really want, as he says, your digital presence perfect online. What Denise is doing, all she's doing for you. And you got to get that ebook right, honey. So don't be frustrated if you have to put off your launch date a little bit, okay? Because you want it right. And I was resistant. Oh, what is a digital presence? And what is a digital footprint? Because I was not, into this world very much of this kind of high-tech stuff. Like, look, I'm still trying to figure out hashtags. But, I want the best for all of our authors. And I'm telling you, Rama's guidance is coming from a wealth of experience to help us, okay? Just want y'all to know that. But I'm really excited that you went to, we'll have to talk later. Wow.
Mary, give us your web address and your email address real quick.
Oh, okay. My author site is marystevensonauthor.com. And Stevenson is Stevenson, as you can probably see in my little talk box up there. And my email address, you want that? Yes,
why don't you just give that in case people want to contact you directly.
Okay, it's healingevents@yahoo.com. HEALINGEVENTS@yahoo.com.
Thank you, Mary, and thanks for for giving the insight about getting everything in place, and having it all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. It does help, and just so that you all understand, I moved my launch about 5 or 6 different times from a February launch until I finally launched in May. And I didn't have to worry about any of the stuff Mary is talking about. I had other things that I was, trying to coordinate. So, it's not a problem to move your date. So keep that in mind. Mary, when did you get the intuition to write this book? It seems like the event happened and you probably went through a number of, a lot of feelings about it. When did the idea of writing about it start to, get into your head?
Well, when the event happened, I was just in shock for a long time. And the whole thing is, my book is about how this thrust me onto my spiritual path, learning to meditate and all that to get relief from the deep stress and pain of loss that I was going through. And you know what? I don't know why, except for sentimental reasons, I have saved this thick notebook, three-hole punch notebook of all Rob's letters to me from jail, from Reno, Washoe County Jail in Reno, and then he was put in Lompoc Federal Prison. And I saved all those letters. And guess what ends up appearing in my book? Mm-hmm. That was my research. I mean, that, along with the newspaper articles of the time. And so, frankly, I would never do anything to hurt him after all he went through. But a couple of years ago, a friend sent me an interview that he, okay, I'll repeat that, Sylvia, thanks. My email is healingevents@yahoo.com. Anyway, a year and a half ago, a friend sent me an interview. Rob finally allowed himself to be interviewed. And in fact, I got the author's permission, and I used that in my book. And at the end of it, he said he was thinking about writing a book. Well, he had never even let himself be interviewed. And he certainly moved on from me and married 2 more ladies after we got our divorce, because I waited for him while he was in prison, and we did get married when he got out. But what we didn't know, and he only found out in recent years, is he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And that is what I think kind of shot, our chance at happiness in the foot. Because I spend a lot of time in my book talking about the wounded warriors of Vietnam or any war era, but nobody puts much attention on the, quote, wounded waiters, the girlfriends, the wives, the mothers, the children, and what they experience when their loved one comes home and they're not really the same person as who went over there. And Tom had suggested that we have 3 main points about our book, and I haven't ever put this on our beta group Facebook page, but I thought of 3 things I thought I would share with you now. Number 1, unexpected tragedy and disruption of youthful plans led to my deep spiritual growth. Number 2, proving there is a reason for everything. Usually there is more than one reason in retrospect. And number 3, my book embraces the collective grief of a generation with compassion as we extend our understanding beyond the wounded warriors of that war or any war to the wounded waiters, putting faces and my own true story to the old adage, quote, they also serve who only stand and wait. And I know that it meant a lot to him that I was there waiting in Reno while he was in Vietnam, writing him letters. I know it meant even more when he was in prison. You got to remember, we were 22 years old. When I sat in court with his parents, and they read the sentence of 30 years, to us that sounded like a lifetime. So here he is, no previous record, and as his interview says, he was from a good middle-class family. And we didn't have the concept of post-traumatic stress disorder then. Going as far back as World War II, it was called shell shock. And I know my dad suffered from that because he would wake up when I was still a young teenager with a shout. He was still having nightmares from World War II. And so after my mom died a few years ago, I went home and I took on a family project. I transcribed, typed up all of my dad's letters home from World War II. His mother had saved them all, and she had gathered them up from the other relatives, the aunts, the uncles, the brother, sister. And I couldn't read his writing except for just a few places. And so that's now like a cherished family history. But I was trying to understand what he was like as a young man, why he was so mean and cruel to us as kids. And I know it was war that did that to him. And as war does to any young person who has to serve. So I think that my book has a true crime story. It is certainly a love story, but it is a broader picture of a phenomenon of what war does to ruin generations of people. I mean, here I was participating back in Reno in a silent candlelit vigil march down the main street under the arch sign, Reno, biggest little city in the world, and he's over there having to kill people in Vietnam. And that changes people and all that he saw. And we had rarely get to talk, and it was a couple of Aprils ago when I chatted with him, let him know I was moving here. And that's when he told me that he had found out that he has post-traumatic stress disorder. He's been going to the VA, getting therapy and some kind of drugs, of course, because what else do they know how to do with him? But he said there were things that happened in Vietnam that I didn't even tell you about. And so I didn't ask. I think a lot of relatives don't ask. And when he got out of prison, there were a lot of things I didn't ask about that. I wasn't, too interested in the details of the crime. By then, I was very gung-ho as a meditation teacher. I was like, wow, we're going to have, this is going to save your life, and which I think it did. His letters comment about how, if he didn't have me back home, he didn't know what he would do and all that.
Mary, I have a couple of questions. Number one, did you speak with Rob before you started writing the book to tell him that you were doing that? And number two, has he read the book?
Yes. So I'll tell you a little more of that story. So let me back up first, though. We didn't know. I mean, it looked like they were going to keep him there for a minimum of 10 years. So we were not engaged. I mean, I didn't date much, just a little bit. But I knew that I had to be there for him because I'm a very loyal person. And he got to come home for 4 days, because by then he had made it to honor camp 5.5 years into his sentence. He had already been put off 2 times by the parole board. It's kind of like, don't call us, we'll call you, that kind of thing. And I got to teach him, because the meditation is a 4-day course, about 1.5 hours each day. And so so what we always would say to new meditators, if you just stay regular twice a day, 20 minutes a day with your program, in 6 months your life will change. Well, that turned out to be more prophetic than I could know, because 6 months later he got paroled.
Wow.
And we got to get married. But again, we didn't know this condition that he had. And looking back at this age and reflecting, I go, wow, the poor guy, he gets to come from this cloistered, confinement of prison to now I have him living in the meditation center. And so what was good and what did not show the symptoms is we were meditating together twice a day, and we would have big group meditations and potlucks and seasonal celebrations and a wonderful set of friends. And so the prison vibes that he had on him when he came out just quickly dissipated with being thrust into the meditation environment. And so I didn't know he was unhappy, because he wasn't the best communicator. And toward the end of our time together, I had us do that John Gray letter writing thing where you talk about why you should stay together and stuff. And his was like this, well, for the sake of the sinner, I'm going like, whoa, what about our love? And what about all we went through together? Thank you. We separated for a couple of months in the fall of, I guess it was 84. And then we got back together because I was moving to Austin, Texas, where there was a bigger meditation center. And he decided to reunite and get back with me because he didn't want to miss out on that adventure. So that was good. But 6 months later, it was over, and he went on to quickly marry someone after he moved to Fairfield, Iowa, and then he married this one lady that he's been with for 26 years. And so, to answer your question, he and I were emailing. He was very excited about my book. He was very curious about it. What did they think it was going to be about? It was a 14-year chunk of my life. Doesn't my life count? Was it just all about him? Well, you would think so to see the nastygram email I got back from his wife, who went on to his email, and they supposedly both read the book. I don't know. She was jealous of those love letters that he wrote me. That was another chapter of life, and I think she should be grateful to me that I kept him alive long enough to meet her. Hello, and how quickly they forget. So being the very influenceable guy he is, I could tell when he wrote me a few hours later much of the same thing, that she had made him do it. So that was the end of that. After all those months of writing, and he was excited, he wanted to see my book, and I'm thinking, well, that's what it was going to be about, folks. Every word in there is true. Every experience in there is true. So I'm the bigger kind of person that doesn't answer those kind of emails. There was a lot I could have said, but I chose not to.
So it seems like at first glance you were a bit disappointed with his response about the book. Am I correct in that?
Yes, but like our mutual friend Jim said, Mary, you know his wife made him say that. And he still ended it with, well, even though I didn't like the book, blah, 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 I still wish you well. So I just have to read between the lines.
Well, you know, this is actually something that I think we all can grow from here. This is an important component that you can't please all the people all the time. And
right.
Even though we have great intentions, you know, in our book for various reasons to make various points, we do, you know, run the risk or the reality of, you know, having some people criticize us. And, you know, we're authors, you know, we can accept that. Sometimes criticism is very helpful in, you know, just providing another dialogue to, you know, to blog about, so to speak. So, you know, we always have a backup. You know,
by the way, Rama, the interesting point here is I was never critical of him in the book. I was still being my protective self and just talking about how could he must have done this because he was just, you know, Vietnam and whatever. And so I was still being his friend. I was still protecting him and only saying good things about him in the book and talking about forgiveness. And yeah, it hurt. It hurt to get those two emails.
Mary, I've got a few more questions. You know, this is such an interesting situation that, you know, I just have to know now. Did you have any indication that this kind of event would occur? I mean, did he talk to you about it? Did he leave any clues as far as, you know, the possibility of doing something like this?
Oh, those were the questions that the two FBI agents asked me when they showed up on my door right after it happened. And I'm like, hello, come in. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you could say will be used against. And I said, no, I have nothing to hide. Ask me your questions. Because, you know, my innocence, granted, I was quite naive, but my innocence protected me. I had no fear. My only fear was that at that point in time, skyjacking carried a death penalty on it. And I was asking them all these questions about, oh my God, could he get the death penalty and whatever. So this is part of my book too about the FBI guys. They had, I didn't know, I mean, I was young, who knew there was a routine to play good cop, bad cop, you know? So there was one with his steely blue eyes looking through me penetrating, waiting for me to flinch. And the other guy was kind of warm and human and answering my questions. And um, so they left. I mean, my sincerity and honesty, I think, impressed them. And they left and said, well, just don't leave town. I said, don't worry, I'm not planning to. And, you know, I knew nothing about this, nothing. The closest he ever came was he had become a weapons specialist in Vietnam. And you know that movie, Easy Rider. And those guys were going through the South, and I think they had a 44 Magnum or something. And so we were talking about going to see my parents in the South. And he joked about, well, maybe I should get a 44 Magnum. I just looked at him. I hate guns, hate guns. And so that wouldn't have flown. And so when they asked me, the FBI people, did you know about it? I just looked at them and I said, if I knew, I would have turned him in ahead of time, because he would have gotten much less time than what he was getting for doing it. So they knew I was being honest. I found out later he was chatting up this gal he was in community college with, and I think he was telling her his plans, but he sure wasn't telling me. I did not know.
Mary, do you feel that, number one, the sentence was, you know, was a shock, or did you think that it was, you know, appropriate? And then did you feel that the time that he spent in jail was appropriate for the crime?
The judge, this is what was disappointing. The judge had a reputation, Judge Bruce Thompson, of being, you know, liberal and into rehabilitation. And I wrote the judge a letter, which is in my book, which I saved a copy of, thank God. I'm wondering now if he ever even got it, because I think I gave it to Rob's 2 court-appointed attorneys. He had the ability to give him just 20 years. We found out later that pressure had been put on from on high in Washington, D.C., because it was a very, you know, hot topic crime. Nobody knew how to control it. And yeah, he got $200,000 and he bailed out with his parachute and he skydove with it. And in a night, he'd never jumped out of a jet plane. He was on the parachute team. He had never done a night jump. I think he had 160 skydive jumps to his name. And he does the stupidest thing. He parked his little white Triumph out at Washoe Lake, which was supposed to be in the path from Reno to San Francisco. And he was going to jump out of the 727 with the belly open. And they weren't supposed to see. But, you know, no, they saw, because the pilot was a sharp cookie and he altered the course slightly, made a half-a-degree turn. So somebody in the cockpit where he had them all stay, just like D.B. Cooper did, he was basically a D.B. Cooper copycat. So somebody saw him and they call the cops. So the cops go out to where they saw him jump, and at Washoe Lake they see the white Triumph that I had ridden in many times with the bumper sticker that says U.S. Parachute Association. That's like, duh, neon lights, here I am, just wait and come get me. And that's what they did. And he showed up at 5:20 the next morning after burying the money in the desert and caught him. And he lied at first and said that he lost the money jumping out of the plane, and he and his lawyers worked out a deal and they went and got it. No, I think he was given way too much time for someone who had never had a crime before, for someone who had just served their country, risked their life in Vietnam. And they also, the defense attorneys, what little they did, when you pay pro bono, you get what you pay for. They recommended a shorter time before he could be paroled, but the judge would not grant that. So, I mean, we're 22, and for all we know, he's going to be in there at least 10 years. And so the book is about, you know, my journey, you know, how I got on my spiritual path, how I used my knowledge and growth to help him, and how I was still waiting for him when he got out. And there's a few interesting twists and turns in there about his so-called best friend, which I won't give that part away. I've got to leave some juicy details for people to read on their own.
Mary, do you feel any responsibility for him taking that action? I mean, as a it seems to me that that could be something that being that close to him, you might feel. Is there anything like that that you've gone through?
No, I don't blame myself whatsoever because I'm not an idiot. I would have never done it. I wouldn't have let him do it. I would have thrown a hissy fit, which is why he didn't tell me. I would not have let him do it had he told me. And I try to look backwards for clues. We spent that last night together before I went off with the girlfriends when I graduated college. I skipped my own graduation service. And he let out a moan in his sleep, which I had never heard him do before. But other than that, my God, did he keep this secret, at least from me.
Mary, is there anything that you feel you left out of the book for any particular reason, or on hindsight that you would want to include in it that you didn't?
No, that's a good question. Thank you. I changed 5 names, and like his so-called best friend, I gave him quite an appropriate name, and I said this is a case where the name has been changed to protect the guilty. And I made that guy's name be Dick Vogel, and I said the first name I picked here is very appropriate for this man. Well, when you read the book, you'll see why. There's layers to it. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, now to get down to the process of writing. What did you learn about writing and publishing this book?
Well, it's pretty amazing, the whole Tom Bird method, because I am very left brain, linear, chronological. And one reason I had put it off writing it, well, there were several reasons. Like I said, I would have never done anything to hurt Rob. I had to get a sign that he was ready to talk about writing his own book. What's ironic is in that one conversation back in April of 2014, right before I moved here, I had never heard of Tom Bird. And I had seen in the back of, at the end of Rob's interview that he was talking about what he's thinking about writing his own book. I said, hey, why don't we write a book together and make $1 million? And he goes, well, I'm not ready. I could tell, though, what he was thinking. First of all, his wife will never let us cooperate and write a book together or whatever. So, but I didn't want to do it in the laborious, let's use our intellect and our ego and sit there and do all kind of research way. And so when I took Tom's weekend retreat a year ago, well, first I saw that his method worked in the introductory talk, and the book was just coming out of me at the rate of 2,380 words an hour at that intro talk, and you were there at the Unity Church here. So I thought, wow, this really works. And I needed something like that, something where it would just be written fast, get it done. But then when I submitted it to the style editor, what she picked up is, hey, this is really out of order. It wasn't chronological. The way my right brain delivered it to the paper was like I'm having a story with you with a lot of flashbacks, instead of putting events in order. So she had me tidy it up a little bit and put it in more order. And that was very valuable to make it more readable. And so it took me 2 to 3 months after the course, because this being nonfiction, I had to insert all those letters and the newspaper articles and things of that nature of revision work at home after writing, before we even got to the soul read, the style editor, and the copy editor phase.
What is the biggest piece of advice that you've already done this, but I'm going to ask it again because I didn't get to ask the question. You just gave the answer before. What is the biggest piece of advice you would give the rest of us who are still in the publishing timeline or the writing and revision timeline?
Be patient and don't push the process. What was really interesting to me is my book kept talking to me for then 2 or 3 months. I was doing revision at home. I remember so clearly some things Tom said even at the introductory talk, such as, your book knows when it's supposed to be published. And he told the story about this one lady. Everything was really, the book was done, but she couldn't get to revise it because something took her a year before she could get back to it. But you may think, well, why didn't Mary write this book 42 years ago? First of all, I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the wealth of experience to include in the book, so I'm glad I waited. But I feel that Tom is totally right, that your books come out when they're ready. So that was one thing. And I would be waking up, or I'd be coming out of a meditation, and I would get, my inner voice would say, now you know, this paragraph would be better if you add this one sentence. I go, yeah, you're right, I'm gonna do it. Or even a phrase to a sentence, and it would illuminate that paragraph and make it better. Or sometimes it would be, well, you better add this whole paragraph here. So it is, Tom says that the books exist on the other side already. I believe that. I believe that it is like you know how you can have a sacred contract with a person to meet them and have a union for so long? And the thing is, I believe we have a contract with our books before we're born. And I believe, Tom, that they exist in their wholeness. And so what our job is to do, and why his weekend retreats are so valuable, we got to get out of the way, our personality selves. So we are channeling our own book through our right brain. So what we want to transcend and sidestep is our ego, our intellect, and our personality self with all its layers of stress and fear and worries and experiences. So that is why this process he offers us, I think, is remarkable and a blessing.
Well, Mary, I want to thank you for your discussion. At this point, I'd like to open up the forum for people to ask questions. So most of you know how to unmute yourself. Some of you may need help. If you have a camera, you can wave at me and I can mute you. I'm going to unmute Anaria here. She's got a question. Okay, Anaria.
On a personal note, Mary, do you feel that by writing your book that you got a completion in this story? Or do you feel like you're keeping the story alive?
Oh, that's a great question. And I feel like there's a complex answer. First of all, I really felt that I had dealt with all of this. I looked into the past lives with him when I was a new meditator. I thought, okay, we're just resolving XYZ karma. Fine, did that. And, you know, he moved on. And so then I moved to Washington, D.C. I moved on. I got remarried. But he is the one that wanted out. And he would not go to any kind of counseling with me when he wanted out of the marriage, which I thought was sad. Thought we could have learned some tools of communication. But one thing that really hit me, because remember, that was 42 years ago, and I've done a heck of a lot of work on myself spiritually in every way for decades. When you finish your book on the weekend retreat, Tom always says, okay, now go outside and take a 5-minute walk. You know, get out in nature, everybody. He tells that too. So at the Rouge, I went out there, and I was walking around the back, and fortunately nobody was there, and there's like this brick wall and stuff. And I found myself leaning up against the brick wall, and there were like sobs racking my body like I hadn't sobbed in years, many years. And I really thought all that sadness was gone. And then I realized what I was grieving for was my lost youth. Because after all, that was 14 years ago.
Well, thanks for sharing that piece. Did you put that in the book? Gee, I'm surprised.
Not that piece. But thank you for saying that, because I will put that in like a newsletter and a blog.
Yeah, good. Very good.
Anyone else have a question or comment for Mary? Well, I don't see any hands or, oh, I do now. Okay. Okay, Sylvia.
I think that it's important to realize, and maybe another book is coming or it'll show up in blogs, but that the process of grieving and releasing comes in phases, and a lot of those phases are surprises, 10 years later, 5 years later, whatever. But I also think it's important to share in your blogs that kind, because people need to know that. Otherwise, it sounds like, oh, I wrote a book and all this stuff happened, but it really wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal. But as I told you in your writing of the book summary, that it really engaged me right away to feel the intense emotion that was underneath, and it got under my skin, about losses and pain and grieving. And that's the other part, is that it'll trigger somebody else's grieving, whether it's a story like that or their own losses. So writing about your own grieving, I think, is a very important part of the process of blogging, or even an intro or something like that, or another book. Because the next book might be what you discovered out of writing the book was this release and grieving. But I would see another book coming out of this.
Thank you. Thank you. You're so sweet, so kind. And I just made notes because I'm going to use those points. As you said, that's a good idea in blogs and newsletters. There's another love that was woven throughout my book. And I actually met when I was 16 and moved to Reno. And he's the one that got me on my spiritual path. And he's that phantom love of my life guy who chose to stay like a monk. And he never married. And that's what the second book's going to be about. And so the way that I try to do a little bit of a cliffhanger there at the end of my book. It's about when I was driving to Washington, D.C. after Rob left me, and I was trying to get some excitement up about starting my new single life over again. And then I said, and then thoughts of David popped into my mind, and I wondered what he was doing now, and I knew I had to find out. So my second book will be way more esoteric if I write what I think I'm going to write about our amazing connection that was pretty much spiritual versus anything else. And he did look me up 10 years before he died, and we had a long distance phone relationship because he was too chicken shit to ever come visit me in Boulder and to be alone with me. But that has a lot more of the spiritual depth and wisdom of what I learned and what I shared with him.
Mary, I have a question for you, if I may.
Hi.
Hi. And, when I wrote my book, it was mostly from memory. And people kept telling me what a great memory I had, but I didn't really think I did. It's just that I never forgot those things or something. How did your memory work with all this stuff? Because you probably really remembered a lot of things that you wouldn't have normally remembered because it was so traumatic. Do you have any words on that?
Yes, thank you, and congratulations to you for having that kind of, I think what it is, James, I think it's an emotional memory. I've had a psychic tell me before that I have a very good emotional memory. And even the style editor that Tom assigned me, she was very amazed at how I was really able to take myself back to that time, to remembering things and to remembering how I was there with my own stress, limited consciousness. And one of my friends here who is in Sedona, she's a retired school teacher and she's taught creative writing. So she read my book. She said, you realize you have two voices in your book. I said, oh, really? She said, yeah, there's the voice when you were young and you're going through all that. And then there's this more calm, peaceful, relaxed voice of where you are now. And I go, well, yeah, after all these years on my spiritual path, I better have come a distance, because that's one of the big points of the book. It's how everything happens for a reason, and this was to help me grow spiritually. And Tom was really, when he did my soul read, the only thing he had me change was the introduction. And he said, because at the course where we got in the revision part on the weekend, he said, is this book about you or about him? And I had to stop and think. And I said, well, it's about me, but it's our story. He said, you don't even show up until over here on the top of the second paragraph. And he said, you're hiding behind him. And so I had to really come out more and show how this whole thing had impacted me and what I was, learning and all that. So Tom's guidance was really very helpful too. But yeah, thank you. And, just reading those letters, I can't begin to tell you, that took me back. I had not opened that notebook in 42 years, friend. I had not opened it. All those letters from jail and prison. And some of his letters, he has a dry sense of humor. It just cracked me up, and I was sitting here on my bed just laughing my head off, and other things made me really cry. But that also helped, I think, to take me back in time to that resonance of that emotional reality of what was real at that time. But thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Interesting.
Darnita, you had a question. I'm going to unmute you here.
Okay. Hi, Mary. And first of all, the book is amazing, and that you could take yourself to a place where you could get that to come out. It's just so touching to me. And just listening to your story, I wanted to sit here and cry. But my question is, well, first of all, a statement. I believe when you were keeping all of those letters, that somewhere deep buried in there, that it was destined for that to come out at a later time. I do believe in destiny myself. But my question is, and you almost answered that a little while ago, is I know you had to take yourself to such an emotional place to write this book. And I know how much energy and how much that had to zap you. And where do you find the energy and the emotions to be able to write your second book?
Oh, beautiful question. And thank you so much for your kind remarks. Well, I tell you, it's not any exaggeration that transcendental meditation saved my life. There's just no question. And as many veterans who are learning it, we have a Wounded Warriors program in it, the TM anymore. In fact, I haven't initiating one since 1997, but they have a very full program. And we see people who haven't smiled in years, and they're smiling. We have veterans who are saying, I was going to kill myself until I learned this meditation. And so that's my grounding to source every day, twice a day. And and I didn't mention this, but might as well. One thing that hurts me the most about my ex Rob's situation with his third wife is she got him to stop meditating. Now, I fully believe had they both kept meditating, she was a meditator at one time, that he would not be having the symptoms he is today. And so that was just heartbreaking. It was such a waste. But because I care about him, I write in my book about, I care about anyone I've ever loved. How can you turn off the tap? I'm not that kind of person. And like one scene early in the book where I had been living with my aunt and uncle, he was a university professor at Reno, and she was a junior high teacher. And right after Rob committed the crime, and my aunt looks at me and says, well, of course you realize your relationship with him is over. And I was just like stunned, like, no, I don't really realize that. What about love, people? You can't, it's not like turning a tap on and off. And so I quote Shakespeare in my book and say that line, love is not love which alters when it alteration finds.
Anyone else with a question for Mary? Okay, I don't see anyone, so I just kind of want to move on to our plan working with Mary and some blogging and some tweeting and some other social media work. For those of you who don't know, Mary does have her book launch starting this Thursday, and we thought it would be a great experiment if we could do a little bit of blogging and retweeting about Mary, you know, just kind of to prime the pump a little bit so that as she gets into her launch, there are some hashtag, you know, kind of a track record of who she is moving ahead. So for anyone who is, you know, in a place where they'd be willing to help Mary, it would be really good to do a little social media posting that you just heard this great interview from Mary Stevenson, maybe a few high points about, you know, the book and the interview. And for anyone that wants to, you know, write a more in-depth, you know, blog posting. Remember, blog postings are 350 to 500 words, so it's not a whole heck of a lot. It would be most appreciated. My goal with this is to see if we can help Mary hit her #1 a little quicker, and also to see if we can actually influence this process a little bit. So, Mary, again, the name of the book.
Okay, that book is Falling Over Reno, the true story of the Skyjacker's wife.
And the hashtag that we're going to use with this is hashtag Skyjacker's wife. So you're all up, you know, if you feel like doing it, do it. If you don't. You know, it's just an experiment, no pressure, just an idea. You know, we are a community here, and I thought that this would be a great way that we could build our community support for each other. Mary, do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to make?
Well, I really appreciate this group. I appreciate your time and attention and all your comments, which I was just writing a note there to thank everyone for them. And the questions were really good. I made some notes here to add some of your points on my next blog. And I'm going to schedule a newsletter to go out on the day of my hard launch, which is next Thursday, August 27th. And Denise will be doing her magic, sending out the 500 press releases and the 96 tweets an hour for 6 days to her 200,000 followers. It's what we get with a best-selling author program. And just, yeah, I appreciate these ideas about targeting perhaps veterans groups or if there's vet wife support groups. I was just reading that. Really appreciate what all of you are saying about that. Because we all need marketing ideas, don't we?
It is true. You know, the marketing is the long game in this process. You know, the writing, revising, going through the publishing timeline is more of the short and medium game, and then the promotion and marketing is the long game. Anaria, do you have another comment?
Yeah, so to buy your book, what is most beneficial for you? To buy it from Amazon? Is that the most beneficial?
Yes, on Thursday. But there's that 6-day window starting Thursday, and Denise says, don't sell any books before then. Make all your people wait, because that you know, rush of orders, even and the ebook's only $3.99. So that's what's going to get me to the bestseller status, which, you know, we all need that because we want to put that little gold sticker on the front of the book.
Okay, good. All right.
And I'd just like to add one thing. You know, Mary mentioned that the ebook is less expensive. The ebook is the category that we generally get to the #1 in. It's usually not the print version book. So even though I know you all want to get a print version copy of Mary's book, I think the most help would be to purchase an ebook during this launch. Okay.
Rama, can I ask a question?
Yes, James, go.
I was looking at Mary's book, and she had a lot of reviews, I think like 20 of them, and they were all 5s. Would it be good like to have a 4? I'm
Denise
just curious.
says no. No, it's a logical question. Denise says no. It's like you want to be an A student. You don't want to have one B messing up your bell curve there on that. And so that's a very good question, but that's what she told me.
Okay, well, I believe both of you. I just didn't know.
I didn't either till I asked her.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to thank Mary for being in the hot seat, and I know she's enjoyed speaking about her book and sharing some of her experiences. I wanted to thank everyone for tuning in and lending their support, and I'm going to thank you all in advance for tweeting and posting on Facebook or Instagram or wherever about the Skyjacker's wife. And for anyone that does take on wanting to write a blog post, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm going to do one probably this weekend. Maybe on Monday, we'll have to see. I did see, Gail, that you had a pretty lengthy email or chat email. Please send me an email about your request, because this chat box is going to disappear when the webinar is over. So drop me a quick email about what you were talking about, and I'll be able to take care of that. And for other people that are waiting for me to respond to emails, it's not going to happen until Monday. So keep that in mind. If something came in Thursday or Friday this week, it's just not, not going to happen. So I want to thank you all again.
Rama?
Yes.
I just sent a chat, and I put my handle on Twitter. And so if people could become my tweet friends, you're already sweet friends, now you can be tweet friends. Denise makes these incredible tweets, and she has them go out, and they have the banner with the picture of my book and stuff. And some of you already are friends of mine on Twitter, and which I didn't even know much about till I got into this. And you can retweet them, or you could favorite them, and that's what we can do for each other. And so I'd like to see more and more authors on Twitter with me, so I can do this. I could do it for you, and you can do it for me.
Well, sounds good, Mary. Thanks again, and thanks again for helping out with our business. Without you right now, I don't know if we could survive. So thank you very much.
One more question. Can I ask one more? If I buy your book, what would be the best day to buy it?
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay.
The 27th. Yeah, please. And you're so kind. Appreciate all of you who said you're going to do it.
But you said there was a 6-day window. Is that following Thursday, or is that on either side of Thursday? Or
it begins Thursday, from what I understand. Is that right, Rama?
Yep, it begins on a Thursday and goes for 6 days. My experience is that it's about the 3rd day when you start to rise up the rankings and hit that #1. And let's all support Mary. Sylvia, did you have one more question here or comment? Let me unmute you.
I want to make sure that we know when the next meeting is the 25th. And is there any particular homework, Mary, that you could send out? Or
I haven't had time to type up the notes yet. I know one thing, though, is that Tom was asking you guys if you could have any suggestions of what you want from him. And I had this idea come to me today that maybe ask him what would be the qualities that he's looking for, and those of you who have been on the beta group, to be mentors to the new ones that are going to come in off of this course that's happening now, who just joined Publish Now.
It's on the 25th, though?
Yeah, from 6 to 7 Pacific time. That's the next one.
6 to 7 on Pacific time.
Right.
And just one last thing, everybody. Next week we'll be in a retreat, so I will not be able to do the Rama on Writing webinar. So I'm going to miss you all, but I will be back in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your Saturday. I'm going to be good and hot here without any ocean to go swimming in. So, oh well. Take care. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
all.
Enjoyed it, Mary.
Thank you, Honoria. Appreciate it.